And I'm Susie from Windowsill Plants here at the Eco Village in Market Harborough.
Thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to be talking about 5 plants that don't need a lot of water.
So there are plants that you know don't need a lot of water, like cacti and succulent. So these are some of the others that might have slipped under the radar. You might not be aware of them. We're going to be talking about Hoya, Sansevieria,
ZZ plants, the cast iron plant, and the beautiful string of hearts. So we might as well get straight into it.
Let's go for it.
So Hoyas, I mean, you can sort of tell from the leaves that they are quite succulent. So that is your first clue, isn't it? That it doesn't need a lot of water.
Yeah, they're a little bit thicker. They're not really soft and leafy. Hoyas are actually, well, they're from all of the sort of Australia, sort of Indonesia, Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
I always say they're from Australia because that's where I met them first. I met them in far north Queensland. Yeah.
Oh, wow, cool.
So they're always sort of associate them with that. Their common name is waxflower. Sadly, I haven't got any in flower to show you, but they have these little clusters of white flowers that look like they've been moulded from wax, and they've got little pinky insides, haven't they? They're really very beautiful.
They are, and apparently they smell
really fragrant, really delicious. In the wild, lots of Hoyas are epiphytes. So epiphytes are plants that grow on the sides of trees, and they don't necessarily need a lot of soil to grow in. So obviously here in the UK we tend to grow them in pots with soil, but it is a clue that an epiphyte isn't necessarily going to need a lot of water because of the way its natural habitat has evolved.
It certainly doesn't like to sit in water.
Oh no.
That's for sure. And the waxy leaves as well, when you can see that sheen on them, and we'll talk about it with the ZZ plant as well, that's actually stops moisture from being released from the leaf. So that's another way of
holds
nature.
the water in rather than let it evaporate.
Yeah, so that's a clue as well, that won't need a lot of water.
I really like Hoyas. There's such a variety. So even within Hoya carnosa, you get ones that are the green with the variegation, and then you get this very beautiful pinky one where the new leaf comes out pinky. And then you get some darker ones. There's also one called Hoya retusa, which has got a really kind of almost cactusy-like long, thin tendrils. So it doesn't have leaves at all like this. They're much thinner. And actually, this is a Hoya at the top as well. So very different shapes to the leaves. But once you know it's a Hoya, you've kind of got a head start.
So the soil needs to be well draining, especially for you overwaterers out there. You want to.
I don't think we have any overwaterers anymore.
Not after our last video.
Them.
We'll link that video just in case you are that person. But the soil needs to be well draining, so you add bark to the soil. Yeah. You were talking about the shells as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily add shells to the Hoya. I think I'd do something like some Koya in there, because the Koya soil tends to be much more free draining. It doesn't hold onto, well, it does hold onto the moisture, but it doesn't keep it as wet around the roots. The other thing about Hoya that you've got to think about where they come from. So again, I always think of North Queensland in Australia, is they're going to get a lot of light there, so they don't mind good bright light. I think I'd be cautious about, do you keep yours in south facing light?
I do, but set back.
Yeah.
It doesn't spend too many hours. There is a little bit of direct sunlight to it. And do you know what? I'm thinking of moving it because it's kind of stopped doing anything. So I think it might need a little bit of a break from the sunshine.
But then that's where, so we're now coming to the end of August, we're coming into September, and quite a lot of plants are now needing to have a rest. They've been growing and growing. We've had a really warm summer. They've really spent a lot of energy, and actually over winter they want to have a little bit of a quieter time, a bit more rest. So actually taking them away from the very bright areas, cutting right down on the watering and almost putting them into hibernation is a good thing.
Their way of dormancy, and they'll just have a little rest.
And
do nothing over winter, but still be alive and beautiful.
Yeah, and then sort of come back bigger and better next year. Often it helps with the flowering as well. If you let something have a rest, it then is ready to go. Whereas if you're expecting it to keep flowering, keep producing, then it's not so good. And then the other thing about Hoya is warmth. So really the enemy of Hoya is cold and wet. So you want to try and keep it somewhere that's got a really good warmth, and I don't really like to go below, I'm going to say kind of 14, 15 degrees C. I think you really need to keep that warmth up even when it's in its dormancy period, because if there is some dampness in the roots and then it gets cold, then it's just going to fail.
And that leads us on to humidity as well. So they're high loving humidity plants. So these are the ones that you missed.
Keep misting
during
it.
the summer plant. So medium to high mist. So that's about 40% to 60, 70% of humidity. And they really enjoy that because they do take some, like Susie said, they're epiphytic. So they do take some moisture just through the leaves.
They will adapt though, so if you've got lower humidity, don't let that put you off. If you can do light and warmth, but you can't do the humidity, you can add it by misting.
Would you say something about that they're quite slow growing as well?
Yeah.
Not to be put off, that your plant's not doing anything? Like I kind of am at the moment, mine's not doing much, but it has actually put out, thinking about it, it's a Crimson Princess.
Crimson Queen,
or Crimson Queen, sorry. And they have put out about 5 lovely pink leaves that then turn variegated. So maybe I should go a bit easier on my Hoya.
Maybe, just remember how many leaves it's put out and stop being so demanding of your plants. Harsh. So Sansevieria are my kind of entry-level plant. So when somebody comes to me and they say, I want to buy someone a gift, they don't really have plant, or they want to buy a gift for a student who's maybe just starting a collection, I straight away go for the Sansevieria, just because they're super tolerant, they're super flexible, and they're also really beautiful. In our theme of how we're talking about understanding a plant, Sansevieria come from Africa.
Africa, yeah, very hot. They're all over the place now, obviously,
Yeah.
but yes, from Africa. There's about 60 species of them. And they are phenomenal.
They are really
very hard wearing.
They're really brilliant plants. So let's talk about it. They used to be called mother-in-law's tongues. Oh, we don't do that anymore. So we call them snake plants.
There's a lot of mother-in-law references in plant names.
Is
actually,
there?
there is. But we're not going to do that. We're going to call it snake plant.
Snake plant.
And just keep it nice.
Yeah. So this is a lovely Sansevieria Trifaciata. Actually, they come in quite a few varieties. So you get this one with this lovely variegation coming up. Sometimes you get quite a dark green, and sometimes you get it with the Futura Superb, which has got the yellow on the outside, and that's really flamey and very beautiful. So Moonshine has this amazing, almost translucent quality. It's really lovely. What I would say is I've talked about them being quite variable in terms of flexible in terms of where they go, but I do think that Moonshine needs to have a little bit more light. If it's lighter in colour on the leaf, it needs a bit more sunlight. If it's darker in colour on the leaf, it will tolerate a bit darker.
I think there is a tendency to think about these plants being very hard wearing and that they can survive in low light, and they can, but they won't put out any new growth for you in low light. Their longevity will suffer if you keep them in low light.
Yeah.
They will push out loads more new leaves if you put them in bright light, and they can cope with bright light, as with all of these actually, the ones that we're going to show you today. They can cope with lots of different lights.
Yeah.
So I think it's a disservice to put this in low light, personally.
But the way that Sansevieria propagate themselves, grow?
Let's go with that, yeah. Grow.
Is they grow sideways. So what will happen is you'll get a plant that's like this, and then you'll get what's called a little pup come up from the side, and then it sort of expands outwards. So they like to be really tight in their pots. They really enjoy not having a lot of room around them, but there will be a time at which you need to separate them, and then all you do is sharp knife, chop down.
And they don't mind that too much. And the soil for those, again, high draining soil. And you can see why next as to why they retain their water so well.
So
Susie broke a plant.
I broke a plant. Well, this plant wasn't very well packed, and it came apart. But what you'll be able to see is the really thick tuberous root system that it has. So when people come to me and they say, how often should I water the plant? I give them a really general guideline of I usually say every 3 weeks. And that's just to shock them because they think a plant needs to be watered like twice a week or once a week. So if I say every 3 weeks, then it kind of puts in their head, oh, okay, well, that's maybe a lot less than I thought it was going to be. So it can go quite a long time. It doesn't need a lot of water because the problem is if it has too much water, you're going to rot the roots because they're so thick and they hold on to the water in their roots that they kind of rot from the inside out.
They do, and then you come up to your plant and you kind of handle it and then it just comes out in your hand and you're like, oh no, it's all soggy and rotten.
It's sad.
So
it's sad. Also, I want to just give a special mention to Spiky Bob, who's Sansevieria Fernwood Punk. It's lovely, isn't he?
I don't remember that name.
Fernwood Punk.
I know these as pencil.
Well, he's interesting because his leaves are a little bit more folded in on themselves. So traditionally the snake plant you think has got quite a flat leaf. These are a little bit more cylindrical. They're folded in on themselves. And he's a really happy, fun
He is cool.
chap.
He is cool. Very punk. We love that.
Right.
And this one's great as well. This one that's getting the new growth. So you can see that it's bright green when it comes through. And then it turns into that lovely dark green colour. And this is an awesome one as well.
Yeah, again, that's a
architectural,
cylindrical one.
There is something that we need to tell you.
So you know how I'm slightly... Well, I'm not... That would be too far to say I'm obsessed with the Latin names of plants.
Yeah, no, let's go obsessed.
I just think it's really important because when you have a common name, it might be common to you and your family, but then I might not have heard of it 50 miles down the road. So the Latin plant is helpful because it is standard for everything. So if you say Sansevieria, I know that you mean the snake plant. If you say mother-in-law's tongue, I might go, I don't know what you're talking about. Not even going to approach that. So Latin names are important. The other thing is Latin names sometimes help you understand the plant because they might either describe where the plant comes from, they might describe what the plant's characteristics are, and they might sometimes also describe some really nasty colonial stuff that maybe we won't
go
address.
there.
But
it gives you some clue as to how to look after the plant. If it's within the same family, then there's your first sort of clue as to go off and know a bit more about how they all like to be treated. However, Sansevieria recently has, well, I say recently, it was actually in 2012, but it's only sort of hitting the plant headlines or my headlines now. They're actually been reclassified as Dracaena. And the reason for that is that they have the same floral arrangement, though I've never seen one flower personally. They had some tests done where their DNA matched the Dracaena.
So scientists are obsessed with testing the sort of genetic structure of plants and then deciding, oh, but this plant is exactly like this plant that we thought it wasn't like at all, and then reclassifying, putting them into families. So, you know, I said that the Latin name makes it easier because it's standard. It's not always. So sometimes they shift from one family to another.
Quite a lot.
So you might see Sansevieria described under Dracaena. Not on my watch, you won't.
We'll just call it snake plant. So next we have this one, which I will call ZZ plant, and you will call...
I will call Zamioculcas zamiifolia.
Just rocks off the tongue there. So this one, again, has those lovely waxy leaves, and you need to remember those when you see those, that these do not need a lot of water, and that's because the water doesn't transpire much out of them. And they have these very thick stems as well, which is holding on to the water. And you can see some beautiful new bright green growth there.
Beautifully, so it all spiralled up, and then it will open out when it's ready.
So I also broke a plant recently. Well, not recently, I've kind of left it actually.
Okay.
So don't watch this. Don't look at this.
I don't need to know.
So you'll be able to see another reason why it retains water so well. It's this little tuber that's at the bottom. Which
That's a big tuber.
It's quite surprising that it's even there. And so you can easily overwater this plant. And again, like with the Sansevieria, this will rot as well. and they'll just start to look limp and rubbish, and don't ignore it. Don't ignore it like some people might.
So the reason it's got the tuber is it originates from, well, it's East Africa, so Kenya all the way down. I always think of it as coming from Zanzibar, ZZ, obviously.
I like what you're saying.
Just remember, if it's coming from somewhere like that, it's naturally going to have the tuber because there's so little water that it wants to capture it whenever it gets the chance. So it's going to capture it and store it. But if a plant's going to do that, then what you don't want to do is be faithfully watering it every week because it won't know what to do with itself.
So lighting, again, it will survive medium to low light quite happily, actually.
Yeah, really happy, really flexible.
Again, don't think that this shouldn't be in bright light either. It's a very adaptable plant. Again, Africa, there's your clue.
Yeah.
It's from a hot place and it will survive, and it's got everything going for it to survive that sort of environment. A nice mixture of, is this succulent mix in here? We've got like bits of bark.
I think it's not a succulent mix in the traditional sense that you'd say with vermiculite and perlite or grit, but it's actually a little bit of a clumpier succulent mix. So yeah, the bits of bark and then the bits of coconut husk. Yeah. Rather than even just the Hoya soil, so the coconut husk is in there, and that's just creating a really free draining light soil, and like with the Sansevieria and like with the Hoya, they don't really need a whole lot of nutrition from the soil. They're just getting by and making the best of what they can get.
Again, this is another one that likes to be tight in its pot, doesn't it?
Really loves it.
Crowded in. So you might get this home and think, oh, let me do you a favour and put you into a big pot so you can grow nice and big. It will not like it.
You're not doing anyone any favours with that, are you? No.
But such a great start. That's another great starter plant.
And that's quite a new plant. That sort of has come into popularity since the late 90s. I wouldn't have said that was something that maybe parents and grandparents would have grown. They wouldn't have known that. But it's so versatile that I think it's a great starter plant for somebody. It gives a great backdrop. It might not be the most showy plant, but it's going to be a really nice, reliable plant for you to grow.
And when it does outgrow its pot, should you let it do that, then it's another one of those where you just separate, isn't it? But be careful of the little rhizome.
The rhizome is fine, but would you be more careful of the sort of roots coming off it?
Yeah, I mean, this one's... but yes, the roots as well, separating roots. No plant really likes to be completely bothered and have its roots messed around with. So you do need to be careful that you're taking enough roots with it. So humidity for this plant, they don't care. They don't care, do they?
They just want you to...
this?
I miss everything.
Well, it doesn't care.
And they just want you to love it. If you can, you can leave it in a corner because it's going to be really brilliant in a corner.
It's going to look good.
But if you just occasionally kind of thank it and say, you're really beautiful, wow, that's all it needs.
So no misting, but give it a hug.
We're going to talk about Aspidistra, and I've had some quite serious failure with Aspidistra. I mean, I really shouldn't even be here.
No, not the Aspidistra.
Because what do they call it? The cast iron plant?
Yes.
Because you can't kill it.
The Aspidistra Elatior is also known as the cast iron plant, as Susie said. And these were around they're quite popular in the Victorian times.
Yes.
And they've fallen out of favour, not because they're difficult to look after, if you're not Susie,
I think they just went out of fashion because everyone's grandma had really big
It's like the
ones.
spider plant. I mean, I think we need to do.
And was it George Orwell, keep the Aspidistra flying?
Yeah, that's right. Not that it was anything about Aspidistras.
No, but let's give him
As
credit.
a reference. And these beautiful leaves. Or you would think that this would need a lot of water, but it really doesn't.
They're quite leathery, so they're really quite thick. There isn't any sort of soft downy hairs on them. They are just a very thick leaf. They're not massively succulent-y leaf, but they are thick.
And it doesn't care about humidity. It does not want to be in bright light. After everything I said about these all being okay with it, this really doesn't
Where's he from?
it. This one's from Japan and Taiwan.
Oh.
The other thing with this plant is that when you go to repot it, think again.
Just don't. This is how I killed it. I had like 3 plants. And I thought, wow, wouldn't they be amazing if they were all in a pot together? Because then I read that they like to be tight and thing in their pot. And I thought, wouldn't that be amazing? So I got a big pot. I put the 3 plants in the big pot. And then I had 3 dead plants. It's my own fault.
Very, very sensitive roots on this one.
So the reason it was so popular in Victorian and Edwardian times is they kept it in their front parlours with their big, heavy curtains closed.
I can imagine.
The really dark wallpaper. You know, did they have like electricity? Anyway, really poor lighting. So it really loves being in the dark. And they grow massive. Like this will grow bigger than us 2 put together.
This will. And this year, this has put out 2 or 3 leaves. So it's a slow grower. But
I think 2 or 3 leaves a year. You're really, she's harsh on leaf growers, isn't she?
I want 5 or you're out. This is a very hardy plant.
Does it flower?
Don't mess around with it. It does have flowers, but the flowers are at the very bottom of the plant, and they're small and they're purple. So it's not like something comes out and protrudes like everything else seems to.
Like you'd think, just because it looks a little bit like a peace lily, so you'd think the stem would come up and it would be like, woohoo!
No, it just happens there. Not this has ever flowered for me, but I have seen it on.
I tell you what, it's still alive. You're winning.
I'm happy.
So the last plant, what have we done? We've done Hoya, we've done Sansevieria, we've done the ZZ plant, and we've done the Aspidistra. So our last plant that doesn't need as much water as you think it might need is the beautiful string of hearts.
Which is lovely and delicate looking.
It really feels fragile to start with, so you're already on high alert to look after it and really overlove it.
You feel like you need to nurture and care for this plant and watch it at all times. But actually...
No, leave it in the back and let it go on.
I know I'm full of hearts and I'm gorgeous, but just leave me. Another one that doesn't like to be messed around with roots.
Oh no, this will absolutely... So I was just talking to my niece who, she said, I repotted my string of hearts, and she claims all she did was take it out of the pot and put it in a new pot, and it still was really unhappy.
That's enough.
Water once every 3 weeks. Honestly, do not water it once.
Mine's in south sun.
Okay.
And it's teeny tiny.
So let's say Ceropegia Woodii, which is this beautiful plant, also known as the rosary vine.
Lantern plant.
Did not know that. So it comes from South Africa. Again, it's a little kind of, well, it's not really an epiphyte, but it does grow in really poor soil, in like rocky crags and things. So that's your clue again. It's just not sort of sitting in the floor of a jungle basking in a lovely wetland.
Hanging out with the ferns or anything.
No. It's just sitting on the side of a rock in South Africa, just being really beautiful. So I water it. Actually, the way that I try and explain to people about watering this is, well, I have a little bit of a judge of them, and I say either it takes about a shot glass of water, or I say it takes about an egg cup of water.
Yeah.
So, I just try and say, are you the sort of person who's going to have shot glasses?
We're always watching out for you overwaterers out there, aren't we? We are.
And that's a really good way of if you have a tiny measure, then you can't be as heavy-handed with it. It's actually quite good at telling you when it needs the water, because it does get a little bit shriveled.
It wrinkles up a little bit.
And wrinkly.
Because you're too busy staring at them, you will definitely notice that they do shrivel up a bit. And they don't care about humidity.
But they like light.
Yes.
They love light, and they love warm. In fact, they love warm is the top thing they love.
Yeah.
And then they love light, and then you can give them some humidity if they feel like it.
And just stare at them because they're beautiful.
I watch them grow and grow.
Oh yes, they get
and grow
long.
and grow.
Yes.
And they're also really super easy to propagate. What they don't do is they don't tend to bulk out. So do you remember when we were talking about the Sansevieria, we talked about how it gets really wide in the pot and really full. The string of hearts won't do that. It will just get long and stringy.
So they have really very sensitive roots.
They have really sensitive roots, and they have little tiny tubers. They're really little balls of tuber or corm, and they store the water in there. And actually, that's where their main kind of source of getting nutrition and water is from, rather than the roots, which are super delicate and really thin. And that's why you're not going to need to repot it, because the roots are so thin that it just doesn't need a new pot. You might, I guess, sometimes put some new soil around it, or maybe feed it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can put sort of worm castings on it if you want to give it
nice,
a feed.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd love that. It would love that. And I would say also let the top get some sunlight as well, so it doesn't get a bald spot.
Yeah, it does tolerate not so much sun, but what you'll find is you'll get a larger internodal distance. So the distance between the leaf nodes will grow if it doesn't have as much sun. More sun, they get closer together and you get a nice full plant. So if I always call it a bookcase plant, because I think it looks so beautiful tumbling down on your books. It's really lovely. But you might not have quite a bright bookcase, but don't worry, you can still grow it.
So like with all your plants, the more light you're giving them, the more watering they're going to need. The less light, then obviously the less transpiration of water, then less water please.
But also less water anyway, even if they're in a lot of light.
These guys, yes, I've forgotten the name of the video that we're doing.
So stop watering these people.
Yeah, just back away.
Honestly, they're really happy, enjoying that really hot, dry, kind of beach feeling, where they're not smothered in water. They're just really happy like that. So we've talked about our plants. You can go and look at them, you can go and love them. Don't go and water them now. Do them a favour, let them just have a lovely peaceful time being dry and happy. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Susie from Windowsill Plants here at the Eco Village in Market Harborough. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Windowsill Plants.
And I'm Claudia from Green Nest, and here is one of my lovely nests with a beautiful cactus in it, I must say.
It's really lovely.
And you can find me on Instagram at the.greennest and Green Nest on Facebook.
You're online as well, aren't you?
I am. I've got a little online shop going on. The link is in my Instagram.
It's a bit easier to send beautiful macrame hangers than it is to send plants. So I'm not online, but you can DM me any questions you've got about your plants. But even better, comment, subscribe. What else do you do?
Notify.
Because
you want to know when these are coming out. I know you do. But thank you for those that have subscribed and do watch. And if you want to know anything more, then please do let us know and we'll do a video in it.
We will.